I'm once again joined by my friend Marc Lamont Hill. We have a lot to talk about, from Michael Cohen to the prosecution star witness. That's what he was, the prosecution star witness in Trump's New York hush money trial. Took the stand today. And then there's some alarming, really, state polls from the battleground states that Joe Biden should be concerned about. Okay. And then there are also some casualty numbers out of the United Nations to talk about as it relates to the casualties in Gaza. Marc, welcome. How you doing, my friend?
I am good, my brother. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Thank you. It's a little bit different. We have a guest for Lemon Live at 5. So what did you do this weekend? Did you watch the Northern Lights, the Aurora Borealis? Did you go to the Taylor Swift concert in Paris? Did you go to the Trump rally in New Jersey, or did you watch the Knicks? I mean, any of that?
I was like, you're naming like the whitest shit I could possibly be doing over a weekend.
That's why I asked you.
I can comfortably say I didn't do any of those things.
Well, the Knicks is not. That's not white, is it?
No, that's true. That's true. As a Philadelphian whose team just lost to the Knicks, I still have voodoo dolls of all the Knicks players right now. But that's actually a good thing to do. That was actually a good way to use your time, was watching the game. I didn't do any of it though.
Well, I used to live in Philadelphia, and I used to live not far from the stadium, not far from South Street. And so everybody would come out and party when the 76ers would win. And, they had to grease the light poles, right, so that people wouldn't climb up them. One time, Marc, they turned over our satellite truck, not our satellite truck, our microwave truck.
Oh, wow.
And, it was ruined. It was those, man, they're crazy.
We're passionate. Crazy is the wrong word. We're passionate. We had a jail inside a veteran stadium. We were proud to be like the only stadium in America that had like a jail underneath it, because so many of our fans would get locked up during the game for fighting.
Well, I mean, that's not crazy. That's passionate, you say?
Passion.
Okay. All right. Hey, it's good to see you. Thank you for doing this. You had a good weekend, though, right?
Yeah, of course. Man, always.
You got back from the Taylor Swift concert in Paris unscathed, and I hope you enjoyed it. So let's talk about what's happening in Manhattan. Donald Trump's former fixer and attorney, Michael Cohen, took the stand. He talked about how, about what happened, and gave the details on his conversations with Donald Trump. They even played a tape of it. Yada, yada, yada. What did you make of his testimony?
It's compelling.
I think so.
Yeah. He connected almost every dot. There's one dot missing, but what he's done is, first of all, at the level of human interaction, he is quite compelling and believable. Mm-hmm. He's like, look, I was a fixer. I was a bully. I was part of the monster that makes Donald Trump. I wanted his approval. I did things so that he would like me. I said I could fix things when he told me to fix them, because I lived for fixing things for him. So he's a compelling figure, and he's conceding that he's done things wrong. He's already paid a price for it. So I think, as a viewer, as a juror, as a voting base, it's hard to believe he's lying. You may not care enough, about what he says. You may still vote Trump if you're on the outside, but I don't think people walk away not believing Michael Cohen.
Isn't that amazing, though, when you say you may not care? Because a lot of people, according to polling, I guess, or ratings, people are not tuned in to this the way they thought it would be. This is not like OJ. I know there's not a camera in the court, but what's up with that, you think?
I think part of it is that the thing that most people would be alarmed about actually isn't illegal. So if paying someone hush money were the actual crime, mm-hmm. that's a pretty provable and easily provable thing here. She was paid for her quote unquote life rights, which is like fancy secret agent talk for, hush money. But that's not actually the illegal part. What seems to be the thing that's illegal here, which is the lying about the books and how this was documented and the way funds were used, it feels like it's in the weeds for voters. The average voter doesn't care about that. It's like, no one's shocked that Donald Trump may have had an affair. No one's shocked that Donald Trump may have paid someone to shut up about an affair. No one's shocked about that. It doesn't disrupt our understanding of him. It doesn't go against his character.
It's baked in.
What'd you say?
It's baked in.
It's baked in. It's who he is. It's what he is. It's part of why people vote for him.
Yeah. It's crazy, though. And I find it interesting that people who are saying, Michael Cohen should have gone to jail. He's a traitor, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, wait a minute. The reason he went was because of this case. Right.
Right.
Well, in large part, or in part due to this case, I should say. But, the defense has said, Donald Trump's attorneys have said, this is, he is bent on revenge because he had to, he became a Donald Trump hater. He went to jail or to prison in 2018 by pleading guilty to federal crimes. some of it related to this hush money trial. I mean, but they had to put him on the stand, even though they believed that he has some credibility issues.
I think that's exactly right. It had to happen. He has a credibility issue, and it's an easy one, right? He's a known liar. He's been proven to lie. He's a felon, which, you know, in the eyes of many Americans, automatically disqualifies you from any kind of credibility. I think it's more complicated than that, but that's how the world sees him. But yeah, he connects too many dots. The only dot he does not connect is, did Donald Trump know? It's hard, you know, according to his testimony, absolutely, right? Donald Trump's in on it. It's a very elaborate thing, from, you know, addresses and pseudonyms and hush money and body men and handlers. I mean, there's a very elaborate scheme here to cover something up. But the question is, was Donald Trump fully aware of it? You know, when someone's signing in his proxy, did Donald Trump know that that was happening? I think it stretches the boundaries of reason to think he didn't, but it's not proven yet.
And there's also an audio tape too of him, you know, saying, "I'm doing this." Michael Cohen was explaining to him, and this came out, you know, years ago when this first came about, and they played it today, of Michael Cohen talking to Trump, saying, "I'm gonna do this or whatever," and he goes, "How do I do it alone or forget?" And he goes, "No, I'm going to handle it. I'm going to handle it for you." So, you didn't know about it?
Right. It's a hard sell. It's a hard sell for anybody. I think the problem is, even if people think that Donald Trump did everything that Michael Cohen is saying he did, I think the people who don't like Donald Trump already didn't like him. And I think the people who are dyed-in-the-wool Trump voters, this doesn't dissuade them, because they're like, this has nothing to do with being president. This has nothing to do with any kind of financial impropriety with regard to, you know, like stealing money from the nation, you know, stealing money out of some major fund. It doesn't have to do with any kind of backdoor deals with arms. I mean, any of the sort of extravagant displays of moral turpitude that we would imagine Donald Trump could be involved in. This doesn't measure up. It's almost like it's just, it's not interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So what does that mean then? You think that means he gets off, or I don't know if it maybe, hopefully it's interesting to the jury.
I think the jury may find it interesting. That's a different story. Now, the jury may find it hella interesting, especially in New York. I think that he could be found guilty. I'm not sure what the penalty is, and I'm not sure. As long as he's standing, I still think he's the next president.
Oh, for real? For real?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Why?
And I say that with no joy. I say that with no pleasure. It disgusts me that Donald Trump will likely be the next president. Because I think that, well, two reasons. I mean, one, Joe Biden is creating the conditions where Donald Trump just has to be kind of standing and alive. And it seems like he's just a better alternative to a lot of voters, and to the voters who were on the fence before. Joe Biden is not pulling them over to his side. Again, Joe Biden is an infinitely better president than Donald Trump. Joe Biden has had infinitely more advances and successes and victories than his campaign has successfully demonstrated. This is not about me saying Donald Trump is better than Joe Biden. That would be absurd. But I'm not sure that the American voters feel that way. And what we learned in 2020, or excuse me, in 2016, is that white people will vote whiteness. They'll close ranks around whiteness quite often. And like,
Mark, this used to get us in trouble when I was on CNN. Oh my gosh, but it won't get us in trouble here, because this is what we do in independent media.
That's it.
As I take my shoes off right now.
Take your shoes off, man.
We're going to talk about it. So go on. Go on.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there are people in the midst of COVID who rightly said, look, people are dying. The country's on fire. We need a new direction. And Joe Biden wasn't the candidate, though, that people voted for because they were inspired.
They wanted stability and sanity.
He was John Kerry with a pandemic. You know, he was somebody who was qualified but not compelling. And the difference is rather now, I think people get forgetful. Americans have very short memories. And again, Joe Biden is doing nothing to inspire folk. And when you add to that, Don, the fact that young voters right now are not just uninspired, they're actually pissed off. They're actually mad.
Hold that thought, because I want to talk to you about that. I want to get past this, and then we're going to talk about the young voters. And I have an example of it. I'm wondering, though, you said he's not doing a good job of it. Why it's not resonating? And even they will admit, the administration will admit, they've said as much publicly, that, you know, they need to get their message out. It needs to resonate with the American people. It's not. The economy's actually doing well, right? Comparatively to, and I think it's the fastest growing economy among developed nations. But this is you and our colleagues and the media have been fascinated by this trial. But I want to talk about like the polling around Joe Biden and why it's not resonating. This is the 5 key swing states. Okay, 49-43 in favor of Trump in Arizona, 50-41 in favor of Trump in Georgia,
Oof.
50-38 Trump Nevada, 48-45 Trump in Pennsylvania, 47-46 Trump in Wisconsin. So if Joe Biden, as you believe, is doing a good job and at least believes in democracy, then why is Trump leading him? Why are we here when you have a guy who's 84 counts and he's in court on a trial? He's on, a couple of them happening.
This is wild. I mean, we've been saying it since year one, though. I mean, I remember in the first year of the Biden presidency, when all the Republicans were saying, but what has Biden done? What has Biden done? There was no messaging then from the Biden campaign, and they had already begun doing major things with infrastructure, doing major things with regard to access to pharmaceuticals. They'd done major things for seniors, and none of it was well documented. None of it was well articulated, rather, by the Biden administration. So they've had a messaging problem since day one. There's almost like a political naivete that's like, look, all we have to do is do the work and the world will understand. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. Contrast that to Donald Trump, who still has representatives out here saying that he stewarded the best economy ever, that Black unemployment was at the lowest.
Not true.
And to the extent that it is true, he inherited an Obama economy that kept trending in the same direction. He didn't do anything, actually. But he knows how to message. He knows how to keep saying something until people believe it. Biden doesn't do that. And I don't want to attribute that to age. I don't want to attribute that to like he's a sluggish campaign, although I feel that way a little bit, because his aides should be doing that. His proxies should be doing that. And I'm not seeing it at all.
You think there's something else going on, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So is there anything he can do to turn it around? And is it too late, you think?
I think there's always something you can do. I mean, remember in 2016 or 2008, excuse me, back in the day, when Obama and McCain were sort of running neck and neck at one point, and McCain said, "Look, I focus on these wars," because everybody was talking war talk, and suddenly he said, "I don't know much about the economy." Then we had an economic crisis, and suddenly McCain seemed out of step and obsolete. My point is, it can take a week or a month, and the entire race could turn around. Everything could be different. What's going to make they're doing it. He's running he's always running. Just keep saying a lot of bad press and waiting for it to go away, and assuming the most cynical interpretation of white American voters, of Southern voters, of less educated voters, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think what Biden has to do right now, one is hope for some major geopolitical change, because as long as this war is happening in Gaza, I don't think he's looking strong. I think he needs something to change abroad, and he has control over that, obviously. And I think domestically, he's going to have to barnstorm. He's going to have to go through this country eyes and excited. He's going to have to Bernie stuff, but he's going to have to look like a new person.
But everybody, so here's the thing, I shouldn't say everybody. I think people who are either supporting Joe Biden, which is a lot of folks, including my mother, right? And people of the administration think that there's going to be another James Clyburn moment, right? Like, something's going to happen and then it's going to push him forward in the polls. Because he was out of there. He was like polling really low until James Clyburn really kind of saved him. Do you think there's a moment like that, or do you think it's just going to be tough, hard work?
Because the difference is the Clyburn moment, that South Carolina moment, happens in a primary where those folk were coming out anyway. It was just a matter of who they were going to pick, and directing people to vote for Biden instead of Bernie or Kamala or Buttigieg or whatever is a much easier lift than anybody who is still considering Donald Trump looks at the world very differently than you and I do.
Amen. I notice this every time that I've been doing, because I'm in the streaming world, and every time I go on a streaming show or a podcast show, these guys are usually pretty conservative and pretty, and I get that question. They are, but what about this? What about this? Joe Biden can barely speak, and it's like, wow. I mean, it's a huge echo chamber of a lot of it of bullshit. Yep. But still, they believe it, and a lot of folks believe it, and they have huge platforms. These streaming platforms are really outreaching some of the broadcast and cable platforms.
But by far, it's not even close, and they are not going to be easily swayed. There's nobody other than Donald Trump himself who could get them to vote for somebody other than Donald Trump. It's a tough lift. I mean, they could have been pragmatic 6 months ago, or a year ago, and voted for DeSantis, right? They could have had Donald Trump with polish. They could have had Donald Trump with experience. They could have had Donald Trump with a coherent policy agenda.
Donald Trump with Ozempic. But
yes.
Come on now.
That is it.
Let's be real. For real.
That's it. Right. Exactly. That's it. Donald Trump with Ozempic. That's exactly right. But they didn't choose that, right? They're very clear about what they want. It's a cult of personality. And I don't think anything can convert them. And again,
they could have had they could have had an old school sort of middle of the road rational conservative like Nikki Haley. They were like, no, they rejected that.
They wanted no parts of her for a few reasons. It was also the Nimarata Randawa of it all that made them say, you know, it's like you can Nikki it all up you want, you still not white. And that's I think that's a significant part of it. And I think that speaks to this base. Now, if you're one of the people on the fence where you're saying, look, I'm not a Donald Trump stan, but I do care where the economy is going. I do care about all this other stuff, and I'm not sure Biden is our guy. If you're on the fence like that, I still think you find that still means you find Trump's arguments compelling. And if you find Trump's arguments compelling, I'm not sure Biden can do much for you right now.
Do you think there is a chance that he relinquishes his delegates at the convention, and someone else becomes a nominee? Maybe the Gavin Newsom steps in?
I would have loved to have seen Biden step back before this primary season came and put Gavin Newsom in a position to run, but I don't see it happening. I think it would make the Democratic Party look disorganized. I think it would make the Democratic Party. I think it would make it very easy for people to choose Trump. And Newsom has been so far out of the game, and I think black voters would be alienated from the Kamala Harris piece of it. I think it would be a mess, and I think it would be the worst thing that Democrats could do. I think they've chosen their person, and now he's got to ride it out. Biden could absolutely win this election, but he's just got a heavy lift, and he's got to make some major turnarounds. But there's nobody else at this moment who could do any better.
I want to look at if I can find it here. I just thought about there's some polling out. Let me see. I think it's right here. I think I have it somewhere. That as it relates to Donald Trump and young people. Here it is. No, that's not about it. But anyway, there's polling as it relates to Donald Trump and young people, and it shows that he's losing. And you mentioned Gaza.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if it has anything to do with what's happening in Gaza, because he's losing a lot of support among young people, and he's going to need young people to join him, or it ain't going to happen. Let's see. Gaza is hurting Biden with some young voters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Biden is losing. I mean, again, I spent a lot of time on college campuses, and people are disgusted by Biden. I don't know if those young voters vote Trump. I don't see it happening, but I do see them staying home. I do see them voting third party more than ever. Biden has had multiple opportunities to just take a centrist position on Gaza. He doesn't take an extreme position. He doesn't take a radical position. Mm-hmm. He could just take a very basic position and say, hey, I support a ceasefire right now. Not sending back channel messages, not leaking things to the press, not get Anthony Blinken to leak things to the press as he goes on global tours, but to explicitly say, hey, we need a ceasefire right now. And 2 months prior, hey, Israel has gone too far, right? We believe in a nation's right to territorial integrity and to defend itself, but we cannot go into a territory where this many children, this many women, this many civilians are being harmed. This is preventable, and it must be done. Like that would not be considered a radical stance to take, and he didn't. And so I think voters are frustrated. Yeah.
I was looking for that polling, but I also wanted to show something. Producers, if you have this at Duke University, you can put up the video. The Duke University, when Jerry Seinfeld was giving the commencement address, and some of the students walked out.
Jerry is also serving as our commencement speaker today. So, what's the big deal about our commencement speaker?
So, I have been saying I think that this is not everyone. A lot of people think this is going to dissipate because kids are going home, right? Commencement address are going to go home for the summer. I don't believe that. I think that this is going to carry through the summer. They're going to take it to to their parents. They'll have more free time. They don't have to study to do rallies and stuff like that. And I think it's going to go on until the election. And by the way, they weren't just supporting it because Jerry Seinfeld um, is a supporter of Israel. They were upset because Jerry Seinfeld attended this IDF camp, which was like a life in an IDF soldiers, a day in the life of, and they just thought that was beyond pale.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's important to highlight that. I think there have been many people, especially closer to October 7th, who expressed solidarity, concern with the Israeli people, who lamented the violence that happened that day and the 1,139 lives that were taken, not to mention the dozens of people, if not hundreds of people who were kidnapped. I think lots of people articulated that sentiment, and people aren't getting boycotted or protested because of that. It's subsequent stuff that has gotten Jerry Seinfeld in the predicament that he was in the other day at Duke, where people are saying, hey, wait a minute, you're actually supporting war. You're actually supporting the military arm of the Israeli government, which right now is continuing, is about to do a ground invasion in Rafah.
Yeah.
So it's that context that we're actually upset about. And you're right. I think you're going to see that all summer. I think you're going to see it next fall. As long as this war is going on, and as long as American universities and corporations are complicit, I think you're going to see a lot of protests. You're going to see a lot of campus activism. It's going to get more and more intense.
What I like about the show is, going live is that we get to viewer feedback immediately. And there are some people in the comments, right, who are saying we're being down on Joe Biden. I'm not being down, and we're just reporting what is happening. The polls this is what the polling is showing in battleground states and among young people. And that should be concerning. Folks need to be aware of that. I personally think that Joe Biden is, the person who is standing between who's going to uphold the democracy come November.
Yeah.
Because we know what's going to happen on the other side. But we have to talk about these things. And somehow I think that they do have to figure out how to get their message across and how to better walk this sort of tightrope that they're doing with Israel and support. And, I just think it's something that they need to know. I still think that they can turn it around.
Absolutely.
I believe that polls are only a snapshot in time, but you have to be informed in this world.
And I think that's the problem with the Democratic Party in general, and sometimes Black folk in the Democratic Party in particular, is that we're in a space now where we're almost like religious about these figures in the party. So that, like take our exchange, right? We weren't even really criticizing Joe Biden's performance. We're criticizing him for not saying more about the effectiveness of his performance.
You should hear how much I take up for Joe Biden on these conservative podcasts when they say, "Oh, he can't complete a sentence." And I'm like, "Come on, guys. Let's, you're watching too much Fox News. You're watching too much conservative media where they're stringing together. Have you watched Donald Trump's rally? Have you heard him say some words or he's incoherent?
Right.
I have no idea what he's talking about.
Right.
And guess what? The thing is, Joe Biden has to operate in facts. Donald Trump doesn't have to do that. He's basically like a stand-up comedian doing crowd work around
freestyling, right? Exactly. He's doing crowd work. That's exactly right. He's just whatever comes to mind.
Speaking of, did you see the rally this weekend in Wildwood, New Jersey?
Oh yeah.
And they were like, he had 100,000 people. There were not 100,000 people there. I'm sorry.
Not even close.
Not even close. And the town spokesperson said, the city spokesperson said, we're going to cap it at 20,000 capacity because it's 20,000 people can fit in there. It wasn't even full.
No.
It didn't even get to the 20,000. And they're saying we had 100,000 people, but it's a big crowd. I'm not going to lie. And, people, something to take a look at. I'm just saying.
Let him tell it was like a Taylor Swift concert, I
but
think
they're motivated. They're motivated.
They are.
They're interested.
And if you get 10,000 people in Wildwood, that's an index of something. That's a big deal. That's important. But again, he's leading a cult. Joe Biden's running a campaign, and you got to understand what you're up against. You can't beat him with facts, and you can't beat him on principle. You have to kind of go to war.
Yeah. You mentioned, we talked about Gaza a little bit, but I want to bring up, this is a noteworthy headline. There's been this dramatic shift in the United Nations Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, revising its data pertaining to the number of Palestinian casualties in the Gaza war, reducing almost by half the number of women and children it previously said were killed in the hostilities between Israel and Hamas. And this is it, according to an infographic published in OSHA's daily report on May 6th, the number of women killed in the fighting was said to be 9,500, while the organization, which admits to relying on figures from the Hamas-run Ministry of Health in Gaza, claimed that 14,500 children had been killed since the war began on October 7th. So today, 2 days later, in its May 8th report, the UN agency appeared to have cut the number nearly in half, showing instead that some 4,959 women and 7,797 children had been killed so far in the war. So down from 14,500 children to almost 8,000. Still, that's a lot of dead people.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot of numbers. The numbers are high regardless, and I don't want us to somehow scale down our outrage based on the numbers being adjusted. Remember, after October 7th, we were saying that 2,000 Israelis, 3,000 Israelis, 4,000 Israelis had been killed, and it was whittled down all the way down to the 1,139 that we count now as the official number. And it's no less outrageous. It's no less disgusting. It's no less disturbing when the number's a little lower. I think the dominant narrative has been that the Gazan health ministry has been dishonest about the reporting of numbers. Historically, that just isn't true. The Gazan health ministry, first of all, runs independent of the military arm of Hamas. And so it's not like Hamas fighters are doing the body counts or handling like civil society work. And historically, the Gazan health ministry numbers are within 4% of the UN numbers. Mm-hmm. They've stood up to scrutiny. They've matched the Israeli numbers. They've matched the West Bank Palestinian Authority numbers, who of course are at odds with Hamas. And they've met international numbers. And so I have no reason to believe that the Gazan health ministry numbers are off. I'd be curious to know what the metric is that the OSHA office is using to get there. But I'm open to believe that they could be off. I'm not saying like they can't be wrong, but I wouldn't just assume that they're wrong because the Gazan health ministry says that they are. But again, for me, if as of yesterday, I think we had 35,000, a little over 35,000 people dead. If we adjust those numbers and find out that there's, say, let's 25,000 people dead, mm-hmm. with another 8,000 under the rubble, which means really, again, 33,000 people dead, I wouldn't feel any different. There's 77,000 people who've been injured. If that number turned out to be 50,000 people injured, it wouldn't make me feel any different. It's awful.
I wonder what you think. We were talking about Joe Biden, the president. They remember last week they halted the shipment of weapons to Israel because of this potential invasion and now invasion in Rafah. What do you think of that? Is it too little, too late? Is it the right move?
It's never too late to do the right thing. I think the move that Biden made, if I were to read it through the lens of political calculating, I'd say, yeah, he's trying to win back some of them young people who he lost. He's trying to win back the progressive vote. But I could also read it through a principled lens and say, hey, he's just seen enough. His threshold for seeing enough is different than mine, but he finally said enough. I cannot continue to do this. The invasion into Rafah is the hardest and least defensible choice that Netanyahu has made so far. Even if you agree with everything Israel has done up until now, which I think is a tough case to make. I don't agree with any nation, but that much. But if you agree with everything Netanyahu has done right now, there are 1.5 million Palestinians prior to this week in Rafah. There's only 2.2 million in the whole country. They were all pushed into Rafah because of the destruction in the north. They were pushed into Rafah because of being unhoused. I think 1.5 million people are unhoused. 1.7 million people are unhoused in Gaza right now. You got starvation. You got dehydration. You have a destruction of the whole built environment. When all that happens and you pack everybody into Rafah, a city that normally only has 250,000 people and it now has 1.5 million, you are prepping for a humanitarian disaster if you have a ground invasion, one that we have never seen before in that area. Germany said don't do it. France said don't do it. America said don't do it. The UK said don't do it. I mean, these are the biggest allies of Israel, and they're saying don't do it, not to mention all the human rights organizations and all the legal bodies that said, look, this is awful, right? He's still saying, even if there's a ceasefire, I'm still invading Rafah. So in the midst of that, Biden had no choice but to say, hey, not one munition is getting mailed there, not one more bullet. But the final piece of what you asked, though, is it too little, too late? It is too little, too late, because as Netanyahu said himself 4 or 5 days ago, we can stand strong on our own right now. He has enough American weapons. He has a strong enough defense system. He has enough dollars. We've given him so much. Like it is too late. But I'm still glad Biden did it because it sends a message. But it's just it's a weak message. It's a day late and a dollar short.
Well, I want to encourage everyone because we really get into this. You know who Bassem Youssef is, right?
Yeah, of course.
Oh my gosh, Bassem was on, and it was funny because we had like a language barrier because he kept asking me like rhetorically. I thought I wasn't sure. Like, so he's like, so how do you answer that, Don? And I'm like, I'm not answering questions, Bassem. And we got into it, and he's like, oh, sorry, it's a language barrier. But he is, man. He's the man spits out a lot of facts. He went from comedian to really spokesperson for the Palestinian people.
Yeah, and it's important, and we need those, especially in mainstream media, where, at least from what I hear, I don't know, rumors, if you speak out too hard, you get in trouble.
Oh,
you could lose a job.
Did you hear that? I asked someone that yesterday. I saw a group of people, and they didn't want to say. They didn't want to talk.
No, that's common. That's common, man. That's why.
Yeah. Well, listen. The episode of Bassem Youssef is up now. I would say you have to watch it because
people got to watch it. It's great.
It's very interesting. And I also have to talk about. Let me talk about this before we move on to something else. Did you read the thing about Charlamagne in the Times?
Yeah.
I didn't read all of it, but Charlamagne says that he won't come out for Biden like he did last time. Yep. What's up with that?
I think he's right.
Oh, Mark, come on.
Important. It's important to make the distinction. Though. He didn't come out and say, I'm not supporting Biden. I'm not voting Biden.
It sounds like a The Rock move. The Rock did a similar thing. The Rock said, but you thought The Rock's was a little bit more targeted?
I mean, it's like, at what point do we say, I'm not going to be, I don't use derogatory language. Let's just say, I'm not hitting the stroll for the Democratic Party no more. You know what I'm saying? Like, at some point, you got to say, look, they haven't earned my support in that way. Now, we may say, look, we got to be practical. We got to be pragmatic. We got to think about the outcome. We got to think about the Supreme Court. There's lots of arguments for why you shouldn't vote for Trump. There might be even strong arguments for why you should vote for Biden. But Charlamagne didn't say he wouldn't vote for Biden. What he said is, I'm not going to be out here stumping for Biden. And I think that's fair to say. Look, you set expectations. I said I'll support you, and then you didn't meet the expectations. I mean, what are we supposed to do?
Well, there are only two people in this race. And when I spoke with DL, I don't know if you saw my conversation with DL Hughley. He said he had a very intense and honest conversation with the vice president and the president. He said he met with the administration at a dinner. And he told them he was very disappointed in what was happening in Gaza. And he said, but I'm not going to throw my vote away. He says, I'm not going to throw my vote away because not going out to vote for, this is what he believes, for Joe Biden is throwing your vote away. And voting for Donald Trump, obviously, is not helping the situation as well.
But again, I want to make a distinction. D.L. Hughley might be voting for Biden, but that doesn't mean he's hit the campaign trail for him. What I'm hearing Charlamagne say is not, I won't be voting for Biden. What he said is, he's not going to come out for Biden. He's not going to hit the trail for him. He's not going to be going city to city. Like, I might vote for Biden, but I'm not going to hit the campaign trail for him because he's this, I couldn't in good conscience go around telling people why he's awesome. The best I could say is he's better than the other guy. Or are you voting for Biden? I guess. Like, that's the best argument I could make. That doesn't make me a very good surrogate. That's what I'm hearing Charlamagne say. Now, if Charlamagne stepped up and said, I'm not voting for Biden, I think everything you just said would be accurate. That would be an important critique to offer and see how he engages it. But no, I also don't plan to, and I think they're happy to hear this news. I don't plan to go out and support the Biden campaign. I'm not campaigning for Joe Biden. And I was a Bernie supporter in the primary in 2020. But I tell you something, I wouldn't support Bernie right now. What'd you say?
I went oof because I went on a very progressive podcast, right? Oh my gosh, they ate me up when I talked about Bernie Sanders, because I think I told you this before, and this was when we were working together during the 2016. And we were at the convention, and Hillary Clinton had already been nominated. People were screaming, Bernie, yep. Bernie. And we're like, wait a minute. All those Republicans at the Republican convention that we had gone to a couple of weeks before who hated Donald Trump, were never Trumpers. When Ted Cruz came up, they booed him. They were all Trump. They fall in line.
Yep.
Why don't Democrats do that? Why are people still mad about Bernie?
I think a lot of people feel that in 2016, Bernie got a raw deal. The party, that he wasn't treated fairly, that they didn't follow their own rules, and that this was an election that was winnable if not for their dishonesty. Now, I don't know if I believe that. I don't have enough information to make that case one way or the other. But my sense is that the Bernie people weren't just angry; they felt cheated.
Mm-hmm. That's it.
That's it. I mean, that's why they're mad. Look, I mean,
they're still mad. They're still mad, just like the the Rogan bros are still mad at the vaccine. I'm like, okay, guys, that
is so true and so sad.
And why do you say that?
One, because again, they're delusional. And two, it's just counterproductive. Again, when you take politics out of the realm of the personal, when you see like voting and choices as not just a reflection of your individual values and as a virtue signal, but like, look, I'm actually trying to get something done. Getting stuck in a moment of bitterness might make sense on some moral high ground, but while you're standing there digging in your heels, the other person who's your open enemy is winning. And I don't want Trump to be the victor, right? That's why I would agree with Charlamagne and say, look, I'm disappointed with Biden. Doesn't mean I ain't going to support it at some point. I might. But what I'm not going to do is stump for him, because I do need to hold on to my own dignity too.
Okay. So listen, do you remember when I was on mainstream media, they said, Don, you shouldn't say that, because that's barbershop talk. That's kitchen table talk.
Yeah.
So the same, don't say that about Black folks, or don't say that about, the culture, or Democrats. I'm going to relate this to Democrats. Is this kitchen table talk, that what you're saying and what Charlamagne is saying, like, it's okay to talk around the table, but don't be saying that shit in public, because you're going to cause Trump to win. You're undermining Joe Biden by saying that.
I hear that, and it's not entirely wrong of an argument, but the problem with that argument is that it puts all the burden on us and not on Joe Biden. Like, Joe Biden can stop doing this shit, right? If Joe Biden, like, if he actually did the things that are proper to do, have better public relations, have a better marketing team.
The economy is good. Unemployment's great among Black folks.
And call for a damn ceasefire.
Child tax credits.
Yeah, I mean, there's some things to talk about. But again, he can control his own destiny, and he's basically saying, "Look, I'm not going to be any better."
No, I'm playing devil's advocate to tell you that they're actually doing some good shit.
And I'm saying this to the people that's like, "Shh, don't be talking like that in public. We're gonna all get in trouble." That's who I'm talking to right now. All y'all out there that's telling me that, don't say that to me. Say that to Joe Biden. Okay. Right? Joe Biden could fix this himself, right? Yeah.
You know what you reminded me of when you did that?
Yeah.
Did you see Tim Scott this weekend at the
commencement?
Oh my God. Oh my God. I wish I had the video.
I graduated. Thank you, Lordy. Oh my Lord.
He did. He said, I graduated. Thank you, Lordy.
Yeah. He is.
I just love you. I just love you.
I am like, what in the step and fetch it is happening here? He is, I mean, he's the abuse that he takes from Donald Trump on that stage when he said, "I just love you," right?
Yeah.
Is embarrassing. I don't, his choices, he's made his own choices in the world about what party he's going to be with and how he's going to move in the world. But there are Republicans who do that with dignity, even Black Republicans who do it with dignity. And it's very clear they have a stance, they have a position, they have an ideology. And even if it's counter to most Black folk, they're comfortable with who they are. Every time he does it, I feel like it's a performance. Yeah. I feel embarrassed. I feel yes. It's like, what's up? Yes, boss. Are we sick? And Dr. King described it as scratching when you don't itch and laughing when you are not tickled. That is him. And it's scary to me. He's so embarrassing. And the fact that he looks like a Fat Albert character, and I don't mean to insult his personal appearance, I'm saying like his actual performance of it, right? He looks like a minstrel. He acts like a minstrel.
I hate to do that, but I can't disagree with you. I can't. When I watched that, I was like, it's cringy. It's so cringy. And it's like, does he have no self-awareness about how cringy he is? And he may think those kids are with him. I think they were laughing at him.
They are laughing at him. They
Yeah.
are. And that's the thing that he doesn't get. And whenever I watch these black and brown people in these spaces, I watched what's his name? Vivek Ramaswamy get told by Ann Coulter, you're the best one in the race. I'll agree with everything, but I didn't vote for you because you're Indian. And and he had to sit there this weekend and listen to her break down why this is a WASP country and why if his kids marry a white person, maybe he'll vote for him. Got to sit through that.
I tried to tell him.
Right.
Both of them.
Right.
Maybe he should change his name to Victor. I don't know.
Don Lemon tried to told him a year ago. You know what I'm saying? I tried to told you, buddy. Then I watched Tim Scott go through this. Then I watched Nikki Haley as she's about to lose in the primary. You know, they start leaking out stuff about whether she's really an American or not. It's like you are black and you are brown, and we will use you. We will exploit you. We will pretend to be an open tent until there's something at stake, until the power structure might tilt, and then we remind you that you're not white.
Yeah. So don't like get mad at Mark and me and say, oh, you know, they're saying it. Ann Coulter said it. We're just talking about what Ann Coulter said. She said the words, and she was actually more explicit than we're being here.
Right. Exactly.
Mark, I'm being told by my producers you got to go.
Yeah, I got to run, man. I got to get to this next Taylor Swift meeting.
Oh, okay. All right. Make sure you say hey.
I'm a Swiftie, man. I love Tay Tay.
All right, brother. Thank you.
See you later, brother.
Good to see you. Good.